There I am.
It's so funny, people share the presentations and they all call digital Arabic Leipzig. It's like, I mean, going on your computer, right? You need the title, right? So you give it the name of the best. But when you are documenting, you're getting all these documents that all have listed up having the same date.
It's like my students' final Islam paper.
Exactly, yeah. And then you get those, it's like, seriously? The name of the talk.
Yeah. You have to give us guidelines. Like I give my students very explicit guidelines, you name it.
Yeah.
Surname, first name, title. Time about having a early Islamic social history, quantitative history, specific thing. I don't know, Teddy's or Lisa or our own workshop, Edinburgh or Leipzig or somewhere with stump up with a cash tag.
Yeah, I mean, you talk to Peter, he's working with a bunch of girls at Hamburg. And, they're doing something, they're looking more at like administrative structures in the early Barcelona.
Yeah, so yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're really good idea. There's a lot There's a lot of material that's been used.
Actually, when I started, I sent a thing around to the sociology of Islam.
Yeah.
Oh, that was
Oh, yeah, it was. Yeah, you said there's only
So I was trying to put together a program. My first thing was that there's nothing. And then I realised there's so much on it.
Yeah.
It talks about sociology, history.
Yeah.
And it's not brought together.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it'd be interesting to bring together. Oh, I need to turn my head. Was that nice? Together on the social structure.
Yeah.
Would be able to. Rather than just the narrative.
Okay. Oh, now it is. Okay. Okay, we. Okay, so welcome back, everyone. What's the sound is working? Oh, Adam, can you hear it? Sound. It should be. Okay.
It's perfect. It's the little
Yeah.
is going out.
Okay, so everything's fine here. So okay, guys, we're starting our fourth session today. Will be one more after that, and a concluding one. So this one will be on early Islamic history, and it will be by three young, very adventurous scholars who want to walk into the field of digital. So let's begin. Starting with Ed Hayes, who will be speaking about about Shiite networks.
Yes, and as you can see, my title is now quite different from what is in the program. Originally, I had the word database in it, and I took the word database out. I'm glad, because Maxine told me off about it earlier on today. I mean, I'm thinking about storage of data or processing of data, so but I took the word database out. So yeah, I completed my dissertation at the University of Chicago just this year, and I'm now thinking what to do with my my dissertation. My dissertation was kind of felt like a work in progress, and I started thinking about networks and associations and political relationships in my dissertation, and now I'm trying to think about that in a more systematic way and think about how I can use the data and present the data I was working with more systematically. So today I'm going to give a little background to my research first, and then look at some of the methodological strategies I've been looking at. In particular, I'll give you an example of network analysis that I've been working on, and then give you some tentative plans and ideas and wishes, and get your feedback, hopefully. So my dissertation was about the occultation of the 12th Imam. So as you know, there were 11 living visible Imams, these handsome gentlemen up here. After the death of the 11th Imam, there was a crisis in authority and there was no successor. This created a problem: who holds authority when there is no present Imam, no present religious leader there? And the canonical answer, the eventual answer that the tradition provides, is that you have a sequence of 4 religious leaders who hold authority in place of the Imam and are designated in the Imam. And the tradition says that they follow sort of inevitably and smoothly after the death of the Imam for about 80 years after. This is, in my dissertation, I refute this, and indeed following on an article from Leipzig's own Verena Clem. I fill it out a bit more like this. You have the death of the 11th Imam, and then you have his agents, his followers, his close companions, who kind of hold things together for about 20 years. When all of those agents die, you have another crisis, and there are various contenders. And then Abu Ja'far, who is, as you see, he's on the previous list as the second canonical envoy of the hidden Imam. Here, he's really the first one, the first real, what I would consider a real man who fulfills this position, taking authority into his own hands and claiming to represent the hidden Imam. He has one successor, Ibn Rawh al-Nawbakhti, and then after him there is a succession, but it doesn't really work. It just lasts a couple of years, and then that's the end of that institution, and then we have what is called the Greater Occultation, which is the theologized, doctrinal response to this rather messy ad hoc situation. So I'm looking at this not through the lens of really the production of doctrine as a pure project of intellectual history, but as socio-political history. So how is doctrine written into a canonized situation through political processes and political associations? There's a problem of data for early Islamic political socio-political history, specifically for Shi'ism, but I would say for early Islamic history in general. For Shi'ism, these guys are not mentioned in the typical chronicles, right? They don't. Most of these guys are not important enough on the governmental sphere to make it into those histories. We have heresiographies which are very rich, but are they really about people or are they about intellectual categories? The question. Biographical dictionaries, again, very rich but atomized, and of course Maxime has done great work in putting together some of this atomized information, making and being able to start to make claims about it. And then the hadith akhbar collections, again, they're very atomized and hagiographical. So I've been thinking a lot about isnads as a source of political social history. And of course, we know a lot about, in the field, we've done a lot of thinking about isnads. However, I think a paradigm shift about the way we think about isnads is necessary, because currently there is a big focus on the question of authenticity. Now, I do think authenticity or reliability is an important question. So I would say that here you see the isnads. Does anyone have a little pointer that I can use? At the top, the authenticity or the, let's say, reliability that this is a historical relationship represented, I think we can assume that it is less likely to be historical as it gets further away from the book that it's written in time. So at the top, Ibn Babuya, he's the author who writes down this stuff about Shiites and about the occultation of the 12th Imam. And so the closer you get to the actual original production of the text in time, the less sure we can be that this is actually what happened historically. However, conversely, we also get close to the people for whom it is important, right? So that the person who is initially an eyewitness to the event that happens is deeply involved and maybe very deeply committed in this. Of course, there are different kinds of commitments going later in time, and it's not an uncomplicated relationship. Now, isnads, if you put them together, they form a network. Right, so this is a lot of what I've been doing recently. I've looked at a couple of things, types of software, including Pajek and Gephi. They didn't quite work for me, and Node Excel is one I'm using now, which is very easy. It's a modification of Excel, an open source free modification of Excel. So it suits me with my limited technical abilities. And here is the transmission network that I put together. So if I can talk you through this, you see each of these guys in square bracket, in boxes, is one of the 4 envoys that I talked about, the religious leaders. Down here is the book, or the author who collects all of this information. So at the moment, what I'm showing you all comes from one book. You can see that I've grouped these reports into different colors. So all of the reports about this, the first Safir, the first envoy, is grey. All of the reports that are about him are Abu Ja'far are red, then blue, then yellow. And these are not just any report. Of course, you can group reports in any way you want, but these are strongly pro, in favor of this guy, and more than that, they claim that he has a real connection with the hidden Imam. So he is actually the true representative of the hidden Imam. So I have categorized my reports, obviously manually and using my own historical, philological sort of assumptions. Now, this is very interesting to me in a number of different ways, and it shows me that I've done this since I completed my dissertation, and in some ways it confirms what I know already. But as an exploratory tool, it's actually extremely helpful. It shows me, for example, that all of these guys, all of these individual religious leaders, these envoys, are represented by exclusive sets of transmitters. There is very little overlap. There are 1 or 2 points of overlap here and here, for example. But in general, if you're reporting about Abu Ja'far, you're not interested in Ibn Rawh. And if you're reporting about Ibn Rawh, you're not interested in Abu Ja'far. To me, this is odd, right? If you, for example, were writing a history of the popes, you would expect to say the history of the popes in the 20th century are Pope John Paul, blah, 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 and you would have one person who was mentioning all 4 of them. But not in this case, which suggests that canonization of these people as a group, not just as sort of de facto leaders, but as a real religious category that has meaning as a group, comes late, comes with this guy or maybe in the generation before. And then that leads me to ask questions, well, who are these guys that are controlling the narrative? And why does, it gives a history of the canonization of this category of leader. And then moving on, that's the same thing basically, slightly different visualization with the name suppressed. And again, you can see it just helps somewhat the clarity of the thing. And just zooming in there again, this guy here, when we look in the biographical dictionaries, he actually is, he has some books written that strongly suggest that he has a particular role in the transformation of the way of thinking about of the occultation. On the other side, this guy is actually the father of the author. So that is maybe an ambiguous piece of information. It may be just because it's his father, he just reports a lot of things from him. Or maybe we can say that he has a particular role in putting together these memories of the past. So how is this different from traditional Isnad criticism? Well, there's one of these terrible graphs that we had to look at when we first studied Islamic history from Yainbol. You'll notice that there's just one. This is one from the statement of the Prophet, Innamal a'mal bin-niyyat. So it's just one report. I'm taking a group of reports and linking them together. Also, with my data, you can't do a real Isnad analysis like this because I just have a few books and the reports are not the same. It's not like the prophetic traditions where there's a huge amount of repetition of the same report. And it's not focused on political relationships. This kind of thing is not looking at the interrelations so much between who are these people and what are they doing and why are they doing what they're doing. It's not about the sort of the politics of knowledge and the relationships between the transmitters. It's mainly focused on the question of authenticity. which for me is interesting, but it's not the main thing. So yeah, there's as I say, this traditional epistemological model of ISNAD analysis, focused on authenticity dating and tracking a single narrative. I'm looking at the political construction of knowledge about the past, exploring relationships between transmitters and comparing several transmission history of several books. And actually the presentation yesterday about topic-based analysis of text would be very interested to put together with this, because that would help to identify which reports one could, so in the Shi'i question, is this person who is famous as a heretic, as a hulat, does he transmit reports that have this flavor of hulu, of overstepping the boundaries of Islam? That would be an interesting case. And so my wish list, which gets longer and longer every day, but exactly. Now, I'll show you what I'm using in a second, but it would be really nice to have something that is tailored specifically to ISNAD analysis. And I really can't I can't understate how I think this would utterly transform the study of early Islamic history if we had a good, user-friendly thing. Word Excel is nice because it's just in Excel. So if it could be, I think it would take a little bit of tweaking to turn it into something that even the most technophobic historian might be able to use. And to be able to visualize ISNADs as a network like this would really revolutionize the study of religious history, religious studies. What I would like it to be able to do is recognize the integrity of individual ISNADs. At the moment, the relationship between two nodes is considered a relationship between just two points, not as A, B, C, D as one entity, as one ISNAD, but just AB. What is the relationship between AB and what is the percentage of density in that relationship? So that would be one thing. So that then, if we could track individual ISNADs, we could track the individual texts and refer back to the text. Also, something that visualizes and gives metrics for dense multiple ISNADs. Then does generationally. So my thing here, it is kind of generational, right? And this is an algorithm that just comes with Node Excel, right? But it's not strictly generational. It does it basically in layers. This is quite nice though. If you see that this actually is the first Saphir, the first envoy. This is the second. This is the third, and this is the fourth. So that actually, the way it positions them, it does have some it does reflect some kind of historical sequence. And if you had more information behind these, it would become more accurate, because the more links in between you have, the more nuanced the relationship. Yeah. But what would be nice is if we could put these according to the death date of the transmitters, or the any date. If we could put dates in and then give a numerical sort of grid based on a death date or date of transmission, that would greatly enhance our ability to use it for early Islamic history. And then lots of other things that we can maybe discuss. But so moving on, this is, and I'm rather shamefaced to present this to the august, but this is how I'm storing my data at the moment. So you have page numbers, and then you have the ISNAD here. This is just a truncated ISNAD. 3 is about what is quite usual, but it goes up to 9. Then I have text that I've translated or paraphrased in English, and I haven't got around to putting all of the Arabic in, but because I started off this was how I wrote my dissertation, by translating it, but I'm putting Arabic more and more in. It would be nice to do bigger and more systematic things. Like, it would be nice to be able to say all of the people who deal with money, for example, who give money to the imams, who collect money and give it to the imams. That would be very nice over a couple of 100 years. That's quite a lot of data, but I could do it manually. But it'd be nice to do something that recognizes the word dirham or dinar and just put it all in there. But so how to store data? I'm just going to go off the slideshare for a second. I'll just show you NodeXL. So this is what NodeXL looks like. You see, I have the I input the vertices here. You have A to B, or Abu Ja'far to Abdullah ibn Ja'far al-Himyari. And then you see that there are repetitions are where I start again. I make an isnad by doing A-B relationships. So it's quite easy to input, actually, from what I've got. But it'd be nice as well just to have a system where I just put an isnad in and it recognizes that in an isnad and does the work for me. But anyway, I'm not complaining. Then you have, so those are the edges, those are the lines. And then here are the vertices. You can see some, and you can assign them color, shape, size, etc., and label them. And then when you want to visualize your graph, it comes up like this. Bigger. So that is that's the graph for you. There, the name suppressed, and the name it's called Sugiyama, the algorithm. What I'm going towards then is trying to think out how to store data that will help me more directly do have something that's usable for easily transferable into this format. And this is no doubt where I will get the criticism. I've been thinking about, trying to pull out manually data based on biographical data, all of these things, and then the report of the content. For me, it's very important that. So this is like if I'm looking at biographical dictionaries. In a biographical dictionary, every biography has data that we can know about the individual person, but also it's got report about a lot of other stuff that is useful to track. Particularly at the moment, I'm interested in money, and then also I want to keep the isnad as well as a separate category that needs to be analyzed separately. So. So how to store data, how to import the Arabic text, how should I structure my database or not database? Yes, okay, I'm coming to an end. Can it be done automatically or should I do it manually? Is this for my own purposes to share? Do I just sit on this and do my own publications once I've done it, or is it? And these are my seasonal wishes. Oh, again. So again, it'd be nice to have NodeXL, especially for isnad analysis, and then database or some data processing system for Shi'i biographical sources works. That keeps track of both the text and the contents of the text and the isnad. And that is, I'm done. Okay.
Okay. Well, so first of all, I think it's totally fine to use Excel, so you should never apologize. And I think that's another thing that humanists should never do. We do our stuff. The way we do it, it's all often idiosyncratic. Well, we do it anyway. So Excel is it's actually a very nice and useful interface for tabulated data. So sometimes it's actually the most efficient, most effective way, especially when you have to manually fix information. On the other hand, I think maybe the way I would do it, if you have full text sources, I would come up with some kind of way of tagging a structure of particular information in each biography that can be automatically extracted and reformatted in the table that you already have. And the beauty of that approach is that you never actually look at the data when it's reformatted. You always have access to your text. So the problem with this is that you coded it one way, and you don't have a connection to the actual text. You lose this, and I think that's it's a very dangerous thing to do that. But when it's in the text, you can review it again and see, oh, okay, here my decision doesn't make sense because you see the context, and you can change the tag, run script, and have all your data exported in this format, and they can put into Getty or do the same thing with Node.js. It looks like looks pretty nice way of generating graphs. The problem maybe is that if your network grows, then it starts choking out.
Yeah. Actually, even for this, what you say about updating your choices is very pertinent.
Yeah, and you want to have your text always there.
Yeah.
So we're actually doing something similar now with geographical.
Right.
So we add certain information in our very idiosyncratic way, but idiosyncratic is not bad. Bad when it's inconsistent.
Right.
So when it's consistent, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because if you come up with a better way of coding, you can easily reformat it. So I think that's would be a solution. Okay, any other comments? I don't want to take all this. It's an exciting topic.
Well, this is just kind of a basic question, but of all not only the ISNADs that you're working with for this, but just in a more general sense, how many of them are digitized and easily available in text that you can get your hands on?
Well, it's like, you have Shia library, right? So there's I don't know which text you have, but do you have the whole lot, or is it?
It's recorded, right?
So it's all there. I mean, it's digitized and it's available. And my general feeling about the Iranian process is good. The text they mention the editor, and they are a lot of them are the text I would use otherwise. And this particular text that I drew the data from today, I've checked against against print edition. It's the same, except for one or two typos that are easy to spot because they're gobbledygook. It's not like it's an entry issue. It's some kind of, I don't know, some clearly some clear machine error that is very visible.
As a follow-up to Maxime's comment, in a way, since you asked whether you do it for yourself or for the larger public, wherever that is, if you follow his approach in the sort of tagging, then of course sharing it again and then normalizing to a certain standard, it would be the way to go, to say others to work with you.
Yeah.
Because you can, once you mark up all the stuff,
Yeah.
back to the community, or you might be able to share stuff that other people are marking up.
Yeah.
So it would complete, I think, totally support what Maxime's suggestion, and then go further and standardize it automatically and share it.
So the one, I mean, the wrinkle on this is that some of the books are very well edited. One of the key books, Keshi's Rajal, which is the earliest biographical dictionary of Shi'i works, is terribly edited. And I know someone who intends to edit it, but who knows when he'll get around to it. So then the question is, do I wait or do I? But your basic point is taken, and I'm convinced actually. So,
do you know Neo4j? It's a great database engine which is suitable for networks, for the graph database engine, and it's quite standard nowadays for tasks like that.
oh, okay.
So give it a chance.
Yes, yeah, I think you are. Neo4j.
Neo4j, Neo4.
Right. And does it have a relatively foolproof interface, or is it?
Oh well, I can use it, so I think that it is.
Yes. Well. I feel I may be more of a fool. Yeah. You know, I mean, back in the days when blogs were made of HTML, I used to do HTML a bit, but that's the extent of my.
Oh well, I mean, again, we can Tim, the markdown scheme that I recently trying to put together some consistent pattern and making money and some work with it because it's very simple. You can define your own tags. You can define the way how you tag what you tag. And it's again it's idiosyncratic, but then we have TI-XML to which we can convert it, and that will be usable in larger frameworks that work with that are designed to work with that. So that's I think that's this. Which I think again I can show you later examples of this.
Well, maybe this will become a standard for Islamic history. But if a number, let's say, using the same system.
Okay, so our next speaker is Majid Robinson, at Edinburgh University, and we'll be talking about early Arab genealogies.
Okay, thanks.
Oh. I don't see it.
Yeah, okay. I think a lot of what I'm going to say follows on quite nicely from what Ed was saying. We come from a similar background, not just in terms of subject matter, but in terms of where we are also career-wise. I've also recently, a couple of years ago, finished a PhD now looking for the next stage. I've got just not showing off. I've got 3 years of funding for some money, so I'm looking to do projects and things based around digital humanities. So I feel like I'm sitting at Santa's knee a bit here as well. Now I've got my Christmas list with him that has just delivered his. But I thought it was also interesting for, especially those who are more advanced in terms of doing proper computer sciences, to know what a common or garden academic is doing. Someone who's enthusiastic about digital humanities, but doesn't really have the technical background to build his own tools of analysis. On top of that, I'm also based in Edinburgh, which is not a centre of digital humanities learning. Well, our university is very keen for us to stamp the digital humanities stamp on things, but we're not going to hire us a digital humanities department or anything like that. So again, we're on our own part of the connected community. As for my research itself, it centres on the Arabic genealogical literary tradition, or Nasab. And this encompasses works that were written in Arabic and structured along genealogical lines. Typically, they'll focus on a certain lineage, which tends to be all Arabs, or it could be all the Quraysh, or a particular tribe of the Quraysh. They'll link back normally from Adam or a founding figure to a central figure, often Muhammad, and then radiate away from that. It's a very unique style of writing. And it really flourished in the 9th century. We get some other works in the later centuries. The 9th century is the one we focus on. And then it sort of dies away later on with a couple of comebacks. I thought at this stage it might be nice to have a look at a bit of what a genealogy looks like. So the principal work I work with is the Nasab Quraysh. So it's the genealogy of Quraysh, Miles and Bain, 584-851, quite short. And it contains a large number of records. I'm approximating nearly 3,000 children in this figure, for which we know the identity of the parents, but it's the status of the mother. And the typical entry looks like that. So Abdul was just translated from the original, this is just a general entry, Abdul and Mahara. You get Ali the Elder, Ali, Muhammad, Hakam, etc., etc. So it's linking everyone together. And she married so their mother was a concubine. So it's a very dry type of literature. He occasionally interjects a bit of poetry and anecdotes, but most of the time it's a bit like a telephone directory. There's a reason why people don't tend to focus on that side of literature. A lot of it looks like this. At the same time, I was convinced there's more going on here than meets the eye. So at the beginning of my PhD research, I thought, well, what will happen if we start stripping out bits of this data? And since then, one avenue of my research has been stripping out the data and trying to reconstruct early Islamic history from the period 500 to 1050 AD. Second part of my research has been to look at the genealogy as a genre. What do people like Al-Zubayri mean when they describe Nasab? When they talk about the tribe of the Quraysh, who are they including? The first question, though, is do we know if any of this? So the first strand, then, looking at reconstructing historical narratives. The first problem is, how do we know any of this data is accurate? I mean, he's writing 851. A lot of these relationships are happening in the mid-7th century or earlier. We've got classic problems now in history. We just don't know if these narrative sources are accurate. And for any one of those individual data points, a marriage, for instance, or a mother-child relationship or a father-child relationship, we have no external sources confirming it. They're all within the Arabic narrative tradition. So it's completely likely they're self-reinforcing. You can't use other bits of narrative tradition on their own to prove this stuff. But following from Bullett's theory, and Patricia Crone's also suggested this, I thought, well, if you get a massive data and analyse that, surely we might be able to iron out the individual wrinkles or the individual issues we haven't. The question is then, which bit of data do you strip out? Already now examining, we see a huge amount of information. I thought focusing on marriage would be an interesting one, so I went for that and stripped out the maternal information. So that's that here. So there. So for each father, I said number of children born to Arab women, number of children born to concubines. I then had to strike, there's no dates as well, you notice. So I had to come up with a generational schema. So I said, everyone essentially radiated away from Qusay, so he's 5 generations before Muhammad. So everyone was given a generational tag, everyone was given a number of children, and then they were assigned the number of children they had by each mother. This took about 18 months to work out these research questions, to input all the data. I used Excel as well because I understand it, it's straightforward. Then I could start playing around with numbers. And I ended up with this. So this is tracking the number of children born to Arab males recorded in the NASA Quraysh. Generation 0 here, so that's a generation of Qusay, 5 generations before Muhammad. Getting 75 odd children being born entirely to Arab women. And then in generation 3, we start getting women born to, sorry, the label's not coming, this is concubine women here. So these are slave women who come from outside the Arab world, typically, have been enslaved, and they are marrying in a sense, to the Quraysh. So in Muhammad's generation, and the generation of his grandfather, we start getting this uptick, and then a massive upsurge happens in the generations of Muhammad, Muhammad's children, and Muhammad's grandchildren. So this is data culled from those 3,000 individual records, putting it in, and we get this incredible spike in the number of slave marriages that coincides exactly with the Islamic context. The data works, and this has been my argument, is that all this data preserved in the Nassau tradition correlates with the great trends, or the uncontroversial trends of Islamic history. This is brilliant because, if you believe it, which I do, I think it then gives you a license to start exploring the data in greater detail. The investment and time required. So this was then turned into my PhD. The stage I'm at now is adding extra layers to this data. And so it's very, very complicated adding all this information in. And what I'm currently looking at is the issue of geography. So I've addressed now these slave women. They're not named, I don't know where they came from, nothing about them other than that it was a slave woman. So now I'm looking at the massive other data, the Arab women, which is problematic because, again, they're linked to tribes. Do we know the tribes are accurate? Is the geography accurate? But yeah, I'm convinced that there is something going on here too. So the next paper I'm looking at, again, this was done manually, using all the sophisticated geographical software, which I probably should do in the future. But again, I took a sample of 50 marriages from Muhammad's father's generation. So this is, again, going to be my pre-Islamic data set. And I took 50 marriages from the early Muslims, so that's Muhammad and the early companions of the first caliphs. And we see a geographical distribution here. In the early period, the pre-Islamic period, the tribes they were marrying into were all within essentially a week's travel of Mecca, with a couple up here of Tamim and back over where. At Muhammad's time, however, we get this explosion, this massive distribution of marriages to Arab tribes all over the Arabian Peninsula. It looks logical, okay? This makes sense. If you're an Islamic historian, this makes sense. But the data set I'm using, that doesn't make sense. That's the surprising bit. Because again, before this, we didn't know whether to trust this marriage behavior. But now, I'm studying this stuff in a way that the data was never presented in. I'm pulling it out, reformulating it. And historiographically, I can't think of a better reason, a better explanation for this data than those marriages are recorded as they actually occur. Unless Alzheimer was deliberately writing this to warn up people in 1,200 years' time working in Western universities, and sometimes when we read these texts, you think they might be. But I think in this case, we've got a good argument with this distribution. Also, it upsets a bit of our previous, and this is getting quite technical in Islamic history, it upsets a bit of our previous narrative. The Croatia often presented as the leading tribe amongst the Arabs. That was very easy for dominance. Everyone respected them as such. That's the dominant narrative. There are some other narratives that make Croatia a very minor tribe. I think that proves actually Croatia a very minor tribe in this period. It's probably spent on Mecca and some sources. So it's a nice way of confirming some bits of our Islamic narrative, yet reaffirms some of the less known bits. So again, I think it's adding to historical debate. So that's one side of what I'm doing, is thinking of the next stages. So this would come out in again, I did this on Excel. I worked with a graphic designer as well, so I just showed him. So he came up with a map of Arabia and so on. I had a massive problem with him trying to get him to do orthography. He just didn't understand the points and dashes and dots and everything. They are quite important. But so this is all done quite manually with a graphic designer. So it looks attractive. Again, it takes time. But I think if you want to have a more digital humanity approach, you want to run a lot of experiments on it. So what bigger data sets? You want to try 10, 12 different things in a week, perhaps one that won't work, rather than spending weeks working on one relatively minor data set. Anyway, it's the beginnings of my approach. So any more thoughts or ideas you want to have, or collaboration or whatever, along these lines would be interesting for me. Other side of what I'm doing, and I wasn't going to talk about this, but the two guys yesterday talking, sorry, we were checking you guys, I can't remember which one. You mentioned something about word use, and this was something that came out of the Kitab program for the South South with the Islamic Institute and Maxine worked on. So we looked at text reuse, and one of them, the book again I suggested that was about Islamic Croatia. That came up with some interesting results. But afterwards, like a week after, I started reading this text a bit more closely, going through it to extract the data, and I came across an unusual expression. So here we have a marriage. This is the Aelid section of the Nasab Quraysh. This is a typical, this is about Thum. So she married Hassan ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib. And that word there, that expression, Aba Udhulha, I had to look it up because I haven't seen it before. It means literally he's a father or a cousin, but it means that he flowered, essentially. He took virginity, which I thought was very unusual for a genealogical text. I'm not really interested in this. They're more interested in actual childbearing marriages. And also, I thought, well, I haven't really noticed this word before. Normally, I just put a note and leave it aside, but because now we have Maktab Shemla, it transformed the way I was thinking about it. So when I do a search within the Nasab Quraysh, Abu, or the variations of Abu, Abi, Naba, or it never turns up in any other section in the Nasab Quraysh. Well, okay, that's quite interesting. Then, of course, Maktab Shemla, I can then run it across the entire Arabic corpus. And it turns up in a tiny handful of places, and one of those handful of places is the answer of Al-Ashra of Al-Baladri. Al-Baladri was a student of Al-Zubayri. And sure enough, in the same section, so we're looking at the same daughter, Thum here, and there you go again, by Ken Abu. So the Asad al-Ashab has been written in a later generation in a different context. And he uses this expression, I think, about 4 times in this much bigger book. And it's linked again to the same individual. We know he's reading Musab al-Zubayr because he mentions it, that comes on a lot. And we know he was his student, so obviously they met each other. But he doesn't credit Musab in this section. Now, why is there then this connection between these two? And in my mind, and perhaps I'm being naive, I've not really thought about it in great detail. I think Baladri has the Nasab Quraysh in front of him. He is using this as a research tool. If you look at the rest of this, you find a lot of the other terminology also is replicated across the two. He's chopping and changing as he gives the other bits of information. I don't think this is something he's remembered from something Musab told him ages ago. I think he physically has the book there. I think we're getting now an insight into the way that medieval Islamic historian was working. And it's also interesting that some bits he's very meticulous about crediting poems, he also says where he got this stuff from, extended accuracy tells you. But this doesn't, this seems to count as common knowledge to him. So again, it's an interesting insight into what counted as common knowledge to the medieval Islamic historian. And what it got me thinking, when you guys were talking about your approach, it's almost like the opposite of the Kitab approach. If we look at the other end of the scale, we're looking at the rarest words that occur in these texts, and using that as a means of text reuse. Is it text reuse or idea reuse or history reuse? Yeah, it's some sort of paraphrasing going on. And again, if a student did this, I know there are a couple of Wikipedia or something, is when a bad student uses a fancy word, you get them. And it's just that same mindset of, I noticed an unusual word, and that started another train of thought that led to this. Yeah, and I'm just going to conclude now. So again, this is the stage of my research at the moment. It's got these two paths. One is a historical reconstruction, trying to work out what happened in the Muslim world period 500 to 750 AD, which is a real grey area for us. I'm saying with this genealogical material, we can start doing a lot if we have the tools to manage the data correctly. It explodes with incredible rapidity once you start adding these extra layers. So some sort of means of doing that, even if it's methodological rather than tool-based, is very welcome. The other side is this text reuse thing, which I think is fascinating. Again, I think it's studying the literature on its own terms. I think it's rather than us saying that these are important authors, actually we say, Bledary, he's telling us who he counts as an important historian. It's the sort of cultural knowledge that's coming from the sources rather than us imposing on them. In addition to that, I think also I'm trying to get across as I'm a champion of this stuff, even though I'm not particularly sophisticated using this. And I think you always have to be conscious of broadening the appeal of digital humanities. Universities seem to be a bit 50-50 about how committed they are to funding this stuff. I think Maxime suggested that, what if Matt Shermer went offline, for instance, or stopped working? That's like a shiver down my spine. He says, well, what would we do? Well, what we would do is we all have to commit to recreating this stuff, by providing examples of how we're actually using the stuff on the ground to create publishable, meaningful output. Then we create a coalition of people who have, have the political and legal means to start recreating something that looks a bit like Matt Shermer. And finally, just one little thing of mine. My other side of my research is on pedagogical research. After my PhD, I actually teach policy and things like that. There is a massive onus on us as academics to align what we do as researchers with what we do as teachers. Again, it's about creating this broad constituency. We make this stuff work in the classroom, we create more people who will support us in our endeavours. And it's been fascinating for me seeing the panels on tree bending and the use of those in teaching Latin and Greek. Sort of there a synthesis between what the researchers are doing, what digital humanists are doing, what's going on in the classroom. I think that's so sophisticated, so wonderful. The way that students seem to be engaging with this material was brilliant. This sort of stuff, I think we're still some way off. And I don't want to get in a situation where we just give students the results of our data sets, so, well, look, this is important because I've run a computer program. What I want students to be able to do is what I was essentially doing in extracting that marriage data. As humanists, all we do is look at big data sets and try and explain them to a different audience, whether that's the general public or other academics or students. With digital humanities, we take these big data sets and try to explain them to a computer, to a way a computer can then understand it. Computers are either incredibly intelligent or incredibly stupid, one of the two. But it's about looking at human knowledge and breaking it to almost a binary chunk. And that, to me, is a great way of rereading old text. I'm reading mass creation again and again because I can engage with it in this manner. Looking at people doing tree banking, I love the fact that they're looking at those texts in that manner rather than just trying to wing it by knowing a few bits of vocabulary. So I think, again, digital humanities appeals to me for all those reasons. So it's about rereading the text in a new manner and using those texts to create new narratives.
I was just going to say, I actually meant to say this before. I don't know if either of you guys have seen Asad Ahmed's work.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, it's a good book. It's an incredible book, very, very dense. He essentially ended up with terrible tables at the end with genealogy. And it was a great resource for me to collect it. But from what I know of him personally, he was also interested just on the working principle. Yeah, so it's got a great research. Yeah, that's what the good thing is that it's a book, so it's also survived. We're always going to be able to do research, whereas a lot of this might disappear in history.
Question about generations that how did you decide was that first every son within a generation? And did they put on dates? You given
It's tricky to do. They do correspond to gender historical periods. And one thing you can is, for the start of Tuesday, it goes to about generation 9 or 10, which is around the time of the author. And there's an incredible correlation between the two. So if two people get married, they'll live like for about 10 generations. There's exactly 10 generations between them. So the generation is about 30 years. So that's 300 years of historical memory they've got there, which is actually phenomenal. It breaks down when it's not going to north and south of it. So I think the end is essentially grafted their own technology onto the existing within the regular genealogy, which again establishes what we knew already. But once the grafting happened, it solidifies it. But in terms of specific dates, I think it's a bit tricky. That's why I like to see things in chunks of 30 years.
When you take this collaborative, they announce the group, and you extract the data and then you get either conversion pattern or the expected pattern. Because I would argue that authors cannot align that information because you have actual evaluation of the soul character. Yeah, so it's really. I think actually the solution again to any story is a simple mark down where we can add whatever you want, whatever you together I mean, silly questions like all we have to better to think about and find so we have our third presentation, also in history. Units of money for study. Talking about the early focus.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you for as the other speaker and also a historian, or I should say another digital humanists have been trying to doing. Yes. Okay, but one point I want, of course, I would like to be, and that's why I'm here. So to add, but then what I'm going to present here is just my dissertation, which is being done now in Göttingen, and plus I'm going to just ask questions. So the title of my dissertation, or maybe this is the title of my presentation, is the book edition, the case of the Stamm aspect of Wakabi. Yeah, this is the outline of my talk. First, I will talk about a little bit my dissertation, what questions I'm going to address in my dissertation, and what are the major problems. In the second part, I will talk about two methods of digital humanities that I'm familiar with on the hands-on workshop during the week. And yeah, some thoughts about these two methods. And at the end, the questions I have. Now,
There's just a bit of a lag.
Let me just continue to. Okay, I think I lost one slide, but no problem. My dissertation is actually a textual critical study, and I'm going to. So
it is on horizontal to Hasham's aspect al-Waqidi. So the questions I'm asking is like question of authorship, who can be the author of this book, as I said, is the book aspect al-Waqidi. I'm going to refer to Surah al-Waqidi from now on. And the other question, which sources have been used for the composition of this book? And the third question would be the question of if this book is a single text or combination several other texts. So the book is a very important book because it's been the first book introduced in Europe of the history of Islam by a British scholar, was it in the 18th century, so he used the manuscript of Surah al-Waqidi when he was writing his book on the history of Arab. So it sounds time. But then around the 19th century, as Tabari was introduced to the scholarship and scholarship, he felt the narrative of this book was a little bit different than Tabari narrative. So the scholars tend to prefer Tabari and consider this book as to be like a fiction, something like that. And but still, it's valuable because it coincides with some narratives also Tabari mentioned in this book, but not preferred. So still, it's a book which we use and one another important group that we see for you. Is that this book contains very few graphical data which are not to be found in other books. Of course, it's not a geographical dictionary, but it contains, for example, information about even some villages which are temporarily so that was the part, the importance and the relevance of this book. I am working on this book. Now I will move to the potentially applicable methods of math. I was very happy when this started talking about the guitar and right first, because several of my explanations is the question source. So what have been the source of Surah? Another question is the case repetition. And how this word has been used in the state of later generations in the later centuries, how it has been used. Recently, I wrote an article which showed that the whole book of Surah al-Waqidi has been taken by a scholar, and that scholar wrote a book about the history of Islamic art from the beginning of the 18th century, and part which was wrote the Islamic congress, he used the whole book of Surah. So these things can be very interesting for me, and I think that histories can help you or can make it convenient to find out how this works. Another question of actually my interpretation is the semantic strategy. How this book is related to other sources, other books, contemporary time, and later on, and both in terms of content and in terms of structure. And of course, the last question is the manuscript connections. This book has been to be very because so far I've been able to go as the 97 manuscripts of this work, but they are really different in terms of content. Sometimes the other manuscript you wrote down it before and then you found other manuscripts. Sometimes some manuscripts, they provide you with a short version of the another manuscript you found large version. So I think that let's use to help me find the connection between the method manuscripts, which we know. Yeah, but yeah. Another potentially method was the structure was actually I was told you something very topics biology. that was not the case. But I mean, marketing now and introduced me to this package, so it's a Persian package, which can run in R, and I'm still learning about it. Found an article and it shows how we can work with this package. And I tried to do English courses and work, but I tried to learn in though, you know, there you can find, I mean, that article works in Arabic as too, but so far I'll be able to use this. But how I'm going to use what is going to address. But we want to do Hashem or Syria beyond the presentation. There are several other words again, but we don't have any idea how they are related to each other. So as I said, all of them are pseudo. One of the hoping was that they can sort of compare these all words in terms of style to find out if they are somehow similar. And if I can prove this, then I can, can formulate this hypothesis or this thesis that these all words belong to the same corpus, similar corpus of information, and this is an achievement investigation because although I'm not able to say by whom these are words, whether after the one, but still we can say that they are belong to the same or probably the same one. Yeah, but that was not the question. I was hoping to answer this. Yeah, but what I also learned here is that these texts are showed here just for fear. These three words are religion. So the other words are so what I learned here is that Arabic does not work with this energy so far. Yeah, so this is a problem I'm facing, and yeah, that's a problem. But see, if I can compare these three, each guys work with each other, this is also very good. You can say that these three words belong together. And again, this is not authorship, which is a major presentation. Yeah, the talk about the style of packaging art and what others suggest was to maximize the Arabic text and convert them to that, and then can work with the Latinized text in style. That was again another valuable suggestion to see, but as I said, I'm still learning about how to work this program. Yeah. And in addition to the points that I raised here, I had also some questions or suggestions. I mean, if you're going to do stylistic analysis and word text, these are also some suggestions. I mean, as I said here, we can just count the words and find out which words have been heard and noted in the place. These are the results you can see on this program. I have some more issues around. Yeah, but I hope I can get through to the dynamics methods. For example, the number of the verbs in 100 words. I'm not sure if the methods can help me with this, but this is about questions. If you can find out how often the author uses verbs in 100 words, then it shows us that she tends to use like verbal constructions or nominal constructions. So it helps us understand his or her style. Another question about the average of length, the length of the sentence, not of the sentence. That also would tell us more about this kind of offer. It was interested to confirm whether long sentences or short sentences. Another point is current citations in 5,000 words. Because there's why is it interesting for me? Because there's a theory in historiography which says that in early historical works, authors try to emphasize or emphasize the works through using very often current citations. That also will help you, first of all, the style of author, but also will help you to understand today's text. So if it's related to the early text, or if it's related to the early late. Yes, it's not my theory. Yes, this is a thesis, but I mean, these are argument for it. So I think that I can, for example, I can prove that the text in the text in 500 words can find that, you know, 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 current citations that will speak for very yeah. Another point is useful there's a theory in Arabic linguistics which says that the more you find used in text, the more they text. So again, that would have you both to find the style of the author and also the date of the text. But again, I'm not sure. These are the questions I'm asking. And also another point, proportional with old verbs, in comparison to new verbs, there are some stems I have moved and memorize them. I can't find them. But anyway, you know, in Arabic linguistics, there's the theory that, not the theory, it's statistical analysis have shown that, like, for example, the 4th, the 8th, the 3rd, and the 1st stem of Arabic have been used in early Arabic. Whereas, for example, the 8th, the 10th, and the 12th stems have been used or have been introduced to Arabic relatively late. Again, that would help you to find the style of the author and the date of the text, in which energy, for example, has been produced. Yeah, thank you.
I was just wondering what you said you tried to use style that didn't work. I've used it with Persian and
Doesn't work.
Yeah, the issue is very simple. We try to use the windows that holds goes immediately on that. And I mean, it's just set up on the SE equals 0. No, you need to change including the other language.
the Arabic font probably matters.
And we actually run myself on that. We're probably going to run Windows. And we'll get the best number of picture it's probably the so it's a combination of this. So in any case, I just hope that the link to your word they can sort the text out or runs and the other will do the readers Arabic text. And other many people that will solve that problem. It's not going to be look this, but it's a way. No, yeah, it is going to solve one way.
You mentioned those are features. I would love the derived sense that you mentioned the architect ones, like the 7th or the 8th standard, just we presented more rather. Maybe there will be a statistical thing that could be good work for Eric, but then not be connected with percent.
Somehow can lay the text through language and then use
And there are some cases for which Arabic and sure the translation times and the better stuff must have changed the state of the Arabic language is dyslexic. But I don't think anybody has ever.
Yeah, and when we base circle argument, trying to establish which text is earlier and later, and we started with the assumption that this one was earlier and that one was later. That speeds up. We can definitely do grammar solutions. That's identifying verbs in each repeated, right? Especially if we have 8 verbs, the computation of it. You know, you guys those well, no. The first one is just number of verbs. Just sort of density, verbal density.
You can just make some cuts from the text, just small outfit, and then take it manually.
Yeah. No, that's not the situation we're talking about here. But since I'm going from law school, was talking about trading data and explaining why trading data is important. But in any case, actually in case that we could struggle on text, we have so for example,
you don't need to extrapolate it by some self-learning algorithm. You just extrapolate it mathematically. Like it will be much better than yeah. Just take it some small power or doing probabilities.
well, that's not of course. Most recent discovery on the is that it's 3.2 million words, 3 million of that can be traced to the earliest most variable location. So it's not the language of quotes, process of the sentences, right? So, yeah, there's that. But at the same time, what we can try to do is suggest wrong. Said, well, you can identify this location, and then get the sort of text that will be devoid for earlier insertions. I mean, again, if you need a approach to use now that we design and run experiments, it's not like the old people you actually have to do it again, and you think 10 times before you mark and something like that. So that's good. So if you have questions, comments, if not, we have a break. And it's still to a break this time in about 10 minutes.
Le pourcentage qu'on a fait de masse critique. Tous les textes de grammaire, ils parlent de toutes les formes verbales, du savoir jusqu'à maintenant. Donc toutes les formes verbales, ils sont bien connues depuis toujours, depuis qu'on sort, dans notre année. Déjà, de la première forme jusqu'à la sixième forme.
The mass critique was real.
Je merke at der er mange drenge, der siger, at jeg kunne støje for at jeg er wow.
So we can rely on the rules of the areas together. I mean, it's not necessarily how the real language actually reads it, and I think that the mathematician linguistics actually process proves it now, time and again, that normative grammars cannot use those languages. This is where my problem. Although I totally
Ja, nee, am 14. haben wir es verpasst. Die Ausgabe ist jetzt am Montag, können wir dann zuschlagen. Wahrscheinlich kommen wir jeden Tag.
Naja, ich glaube mal. Ich würde schon sagen, ich kaufe das. Ich hätte alles gekauft. Ich habe das Geld und Geld. Ja, habe ich nicht. So wissen Sie das schon.
Hast du mal geguckt, wie lange du redest? Weißt du, wie lange du redest?
Ich wusste auch nicht genau, wie viel Zeit geht.
Na, ich nehme an, entsprechend. Oh,
Eine Stunde.
eine halbe Stunde. Oder beziehungsweise.
Ich ehrlich sagen.
Okay. Dann schauen wir einfach, wie lange du.
Ja. Weißt du, du brauchst 10 Minuten 15 Minuten?
Wahrscheinlich eher 15 als 10. Damit uns leicht genau 50 rum.
He in the introduction says that Italian is his high school child, so he wants to bring more advanced student.
Ja, du kannst auch meinen nehmen. Also ich habe das jetzt so technisch eingerichtet, dass es müsste eigentlich ein Google Hangout, dass man über Stream.
Jetzt habe ich da gucke ich mal, dass ich das mit dem
Du hast jetzt schon mehrere Beispiele.
Eben, aber das ist ja
Willst du meinen? Wir brauchen gar nicht anschließen im Prinzip, sondern es geht alles über, wenn du online wartest. Aber ich muss ihn nochmal fragen.
We have all the code for it, right? So try to extrapolate as well.
Well, but there will be much more
Error.
noise.
Okay. I mean, you stay here in the evening.
Yeah.
yeah. Let's sort of concluding session. Let's talk about all these issues. So what do you want to know?
I think
Oh,
I
you
figured.
finished it.
I think
Okay.
I figured it out.
Okay.
So the whole thing. So I've got my PowerPoint presentation here. So and then
Okay.
I only share the
You
screen,
need
right?
to share a screen. So you guys going first, right? Then we have.
According to the plan, we are first.
Yes.
In fact, I would have to put it up really directly afterwards.
Go away.
And just
With what
Oh,
on my
really, Dan?
computer?
Is it
Yes,
all
I
online?
do.
so if I only can we.
It's a new computer.
Wow. Isn't it waterproof?
Can I just,
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Let's get in touch. Yeah. Because yeah.
Right. So, put my email.
Yes.
I
Yes.
just
Okay.
have to find my PowerPoint presentation.
No. What do you screen screen sharing? What's the just? You need the main screen share.
Yeah,
Well, no.
just come. It's BA presentation.
No. Full screen. You do full screen.
Oh, right.
Do full screen.
Okay.
Share. Now start the presentation.
Well,
Yep, there you go.
so and okay.
And now you just started and you're good to go.
Okay, so if I change, okay, first of all, Boris wanted to present something live.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's
okay. So we just do that.
just keep in mind, live presentations never go right. I'm saying it from my own experience. It's up to you.
Yeah, no, that's Boris' part. This is I've prepared everything.
Okay, good.
In PowerPoint. His part is like live.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, which now I need to.
So I tell them it's working.
Well, yeah, because I actually still need to be.
Ich mache mal ein bisschen mehr Licht.
Jupp.
Ich kann übrigens schon alles sehen, was du machst.
Oh, gut zu wissen.
Aber ich weiß jetzt nicht ganz
Nee, es ist kein Problem.
Ja. Ich habe das Google Hangout. Genau. Gleich irgendwie eine Tasche nehmen, weil du so nehmen als Institut und dann kannst du mal das machen. Ja, danke. Ich habe auch nicht getestet, ob funktioniert. Nee. Du hast jetzt nicht bearbeitet. Ja, wenn ich mal arbeiten gucke, wäre es schön gewesen, aber vielleicht viel verschiedene Hände schütteln, ich wüsste zum Glück haben. Ich bin ganz froh, dass dann früher so ein ruhiger Rhythmus ist, die nächsten 2-3 Tage. Du arbeitest deine Woche. So, das Steuerbesitz. Er ist frei. Heute mal was für in Boston.
Oh, das funktioniert gerade nicht. Bei dir funktioniert gerade was nicht? Da funktioniert gerade was nicht. Ja, die Menschen sind weg.
Die Menschen?
Ja, guck mal, also die Leute.
Wenn du auf Deutsch machst.
Warum? Aber auf Englisch.
Bei manchen Sachen fehlen die.
Aber bei mir ging es auf Englisch.
Ja?
Ja. Ich habe auf jeden Fall die Einträge sind auf Englisch auch. Also auf Englisch und auf Deutsch. Na gut, dann mache ich es auf Deutsch. Also komisch. Das ist gut zu wissen, aber. Also bei mir ging es eben gerade auf Englisch.
Willst du noch mal kurz den Link checken? Das ist wirklich derselbe.
Na wie denn? Da ist kein Link gewesen, da war ja nichts. Ich habe gesehen.
Ich meine, dass du wirklich die zwei Computer nebeneinander stellen und wirklich gucken, dass.
Nee, ich bin ja von da, guck mal, ich komme von der Handschrift und gehe dann auf die Sekundäre. Ich bin voll, das ist genau der gleiche Weg, den ich. Nee, das ist schon das. Klar, aber so bin ich jetzt mit dem. Mal gucken. So. Also, das ist auf einem Stand. So, grundsätzlich. Na gut. Wird schon gehen. Diese Datenbank, ja, immer so.
Ja. Wann wollen wir? 16:30? Wir können ja kurz am Anfang noch dieses kurz zeigen, oder? Das heißt, ich habe mal kurz, was das Team und das können wir jetzt noch mit durchsetzen. Machst du das gleich mit? Oder? Du nennst ja eh den Namen, Dadurch, dass du anfängst, wäre es gut, den Namen, Titel zu nennen.
Ich fange auf jeden Fall mit dem Namen an, ja. Also, ich glaube nicht so, dass man den nicht so
Wo bist du denn eigentlich? Bist du noch weiter? Willkommen. Du bist jetzt erstmal ein Jahr abgesichert. Das ist ja immer ganz nett.
ja, es gibt schon nur das. Ich hoffe, dass ein bisschen diese lästigen Sachen wegfallen. Klar, das ist ein Geld
Die Disziplin lässt nach. Hast du jetzt dein Skript eigentlich abgegeben von deiner Diss? Wie lange dauert das dann, wenn du einmal abgegeben hast?
Ja. Text steht, Bilder sind da. Das ist eigentlich das ich bin eigentlich auch das ein Fixer-Auto und nichts im Kühlschrank. Aber ich weiß nicht, wie man abgeht. Das ist jetzt gar nicht. Die wollten jetzt abgeben. Vielleicht haben sie nicht 10 Sachen. Und bis dann ist ja nochmal die, weiß ich nicht. So viel wird es kosten. Dann sind jetzt schon übertragen.
It's a white
Also auf jeden Fall übertragen.
Good. We make free software.
Ja, ich will aber leider sagen, dass ich
No. I'm not going to argue with German administration. Can you make this?
Ich habe den Writer, aber ich habe nicht genau.
This is that.
so das
Ist ja noch
I can use now like this because
You can email the people.
Yeah,
So how many nights? 3 nights. Okay.
mir fängt ja alles an. Was ich heute erzähle, das war.
Oh, well, I mean, if these are like basic emails.
yeah, but I can give like the
Oh, really?
yeah.
Ja, schade.
Well, okay, I can.
So just if it's possible, I don't know
Aber ich bin ja nicht mein
if the hotel somewhere.
No. That's filled in from the reception. That's yeah, they do that. Okay. Well, I may have to email the stuff back to you so that you refill it. No,
It's the basic quality stuff. Business one.
no, I mean you just working on this stuff. I need text them. But German administrators not going to be doing that. So.
Okay, so these are if they're not if they want my credit card.
Oh yeah, you have a PDF of this, right?
Yeah.
Then we can sort this. So.
Kleines Pilotprojekt haben wir jetzt.
Here it is.
Haben wir nicht weiter. Aber das ist eher so diagnostisch. In dem Lauf, wo wir eben noch nicht genau das ganze Prozess bearbeiten, werden wir uns
When are you leaving? Huh? When are you leaving? Tonight.
Nee, bis morgen. Nee, bis morgen.
Ja,
What? Oh, so you're trying to yes. Very good. Oh,
Genau. Das,
oh, so it's west.
Sachen mir an, bei den Personen reden.
Ja.
By the way, excuse me, I know you're not a
I am a good person. Not.
I guess you will. Yeah. Since you put this beautiful thing together, I want to come before.
Yes. Guess what's the heaviest part, right? Yeah, I mean, I think you can email any links. Yeah. Because the university is closed. So it's actually doesn't matter with mail stuff to me, and I'll sort it out. But I'm afraid it's actually because it's so
Yeah.
Ich glaube, meine Zeit ist schon.
Nur zwei Sachen. Ja, können wir das machen, einfach mal ein bisschen. Ja, vielleicht. Wir dachten, es gibt ja gerade an der EUB irgendwelche Issues. Mal schauen, ob wir das nächste 2016 was und ob wir da was machen. Also, EUB? Keiner Zeit. Und dann bei uns im Haus ja sowieso. Brauche ja nicht zu erwähnen.
Okay. Yeah. So it's our last official session, and I'm very happy that I'm doing it for the last time. I'm actually more sensing people do stuff. Make everybody need time. So in the program we have Verena Clem presenting our Biblioteca Arabica. In fact, we have two of her collaborators.
2 for 1.
Yeah, so Boris Dubrans and Daniel Kinitz, right? Correct me if I'm saying your names wrong. Yeah, so
Alright, yes. So we will present our Biblioteca Arabica, which, as subtitle says, neatly unified repository for biographical and bibliographical data of Arabic manuscripts. So we want to, what we want to do here is actually to chart the whole of Arabic literature through a pretty important task, through its manuscript production. Through the manuscripts that have come down to us. Before it's here, it looks like a real program with a team of which you can see both two of us here, and but in actual fact what we have is we're actually before the preliminary phase of this project. We want to start applying for seek possibilities to fund this, but at this moment it's merely a vision, an idea. However, this idea is based and it's born out of our previous experiences with dealing with Arabic manuscripts. So what I will show you today is mostly to show you what we have done already in this field and how we want to go on starting from these experiences and to actually build this Biblioteca Arabica. So since 2006, Leipzig has been involved in the back then pretty early stages of digitizing Arabic manuscripts. They are the rather substantial funds that of Islamic manuscripts that we have here in Leipzig of Arabic, Turkish, and Persian manuscripts have been largely digitized. They have all been cataloged, and they are all available online now. First of all, through this project site called Islamic Manuscripts at the Leipzig University Library, which you can see here. By the way, there are flyers lying around here. You can where you find these addresses, and so if you're interested, you can just take one of those. This has been going on since 2006. Later on, there was the so-called Rifaiya project. It's been named after a family library, an endowed family library that was purchased in Damascus completely in the 19th century. So it's one of the very rare examples of a complete library of the time, not a collection of that was born out of the interest of a later collector, but really a family library as it existed back in Damascus at the time, and we have that here in Leipzig completely. So this has been all digitized and cataloged, This is where I started to work with the material. I was tasked with researching the history of this specific library. To do this, I wanted to put the library and its owners in the context of book history in Ottoman Syria. So this is a library from Damascus. So we wanted to know what makes it special, or what is normal, what is special about it in terms of the holdings of this library, what other libraries did exist in the area, in the region, in this time. What did readers read? The basic question of book history and readership history: who read what in Ottoman Damascus or Ottoman Syria? These are the broad questions that we asked in the material. And as it turned out, the best way to answer these questions was to look at those manuscripts themselves and try to ask them, because they turn out to be the most eloquent witnesses of their own history and their own views. I have here one of those manuscripts from the Refaia library that is digitized in our database. As you can see, there is just on the second page, you see all these notes here. All these are notes that processors and readers of the book left in it. So you can, if you scroll in here, you can see this is a note by a reader, this is a note by a reader, a note by a reader, here's a reader, here's a processor. All of these people inscribe themselves into the book, and I'm trying to tell the story of the books through these people. In order to do that, I collected all these notes from the Refaia library. This is a library of around 480 manuscripts, about 1,200 excellent notes like these in those manuscripts. I tried to broaden the material to make it to say something more substantial about my findings. So I tried to do the same kind of collecting of notes in other libraries. For example, I went to Berlin and seen through a couple of thousand manuscripts there, Tübingen, I've been to Copenhagen, Beirut, the AUB collection. I've been to Halle and to several other collections that I could find. So I have a corpus of many thousands of manuscripts and many thousands of these notes that I can compare. So these people, what I try to do in the Refaia collection is put all these notes in the database, as you can see. As you can see here, within the description of the manuscript, you have links to all these kind of notes. And then if you click, I pre-click on those to make it shorter here. So you can see that I will have transcribed the whole entry. You can see the full text of these notes, and then you can have additional information. If there is information in these notes about places, about prices, about dates, I will have all that in the database, and I will give you additional information on these people. So this particular book was read by Sharafuddin, it says here in the entry, Sharafuddin Musa bin Ayyub, which can be identified by a rather important chronicler from Damascus, from the 10th century. So this man is Sharafuddin Musa bin Jamaluddin Yusuf bin Ayyub al-Ansari al-Shafi'i, and we can actually gather a lot of information about this man, which I give here in the database. And if you imagine to and I give all the data, for example, that he was not only the reader of this particular manuscript, but you can see here in my entry that he was also the owner of two other books that I found in Berlin and in Gotha, that he was another reader in another manuscript in Berlin, two other manuscripts in Berlin, and a copyist, and so on. And I give all this kind of metadata that I could find on. Now, what I did the same thing with another database that is established in Berlin. So they use the same model, the same database model, and the data that I collected in Berlin, I put in the Berlin database. I have another database for the manuscripts in Gotha. There are more than 2,000 manuscripts, Islamic manuscripts in Gotha, which also have, as you can imagine, a lot of these notes, and I put them in a database that is not yet online accessible, but will be soon, hopefully. And what I realized early on is that it's really nice to have all this data collected in together with these nodes. But what I needed was to create authority files for these persons, so that I can store all the information I gather on these persons at the central space. It makes my life much easier, because I used to find not only one node by one person in my database. Sometimes I have a dozen or 20 or 30 nodes of the same person, and I continually gather more information on them. So whenever I can update my information or change my information, beforehand I would have to change any new information in all of these nodes. And if I have 10 nodes by this specific person, I would have to change all the information 10 times, or 20 times, or 100 times, depending on how many of these entries I have in my databases. Now I have centrally stored authority files, and I can, sorry for my voice, where all these authoritative norm data sets are stored, and whenever I change something, I change it here, and then it will automatically change in all the entries that are connected with this norm data. Now imagine what you can do with this kind of data. If you have many thousands of these persons, this is pretty new for me. I have about 2,500 authority files for persons in this database now, but they will grow. It will be much more. They are all connected to all the information that I can find on them. Where did they live? What kind of what was their job? Pretty much, if they were, for example, were they preachers? Were they mudaris in any institution? With which institutions are they connected? Were they physicians or traders or whatever was their occupation? Which places are they connected with? Where did they live, as I said? And all this kind of metadata can be used, of course, to search for specific questions that put Arabic literature, as you find it in the manuscripts, and the transmission of that literature and the reception of that literature into the context of social history. This is something that these databases at this point cannot do. So I don't have a search function that with which I could search for. Tell me what all the Christians I have from the 10th to 12th century. What did they read? What kind of books did they possess? This is something. The data is there. I have that, but I cannot look for it now, and I cannot put it in graphs. I cannot, for example, I cannot put the geographic data that I have on a map. So there still is obviously a great need to develop this tool further, to interact it better, because I have several different databases that should be interconnected better, and this is why we need to find a way to go on with this. I mean, these projects are now all finished, or don't have any funding. I mean, I'm still working with this data, but there is no funding anymore. So what we want to do is to stabilize this working process. I mean, there's so many more manuscripts to discover, to work on, and to do this in a kind of stable way, not with small projects and another small project here and there, but for a large number of years to really collect all the kind of data and to have a place where to put it, and to develop the tools that would allow us to, the analytical tools that would allow us to chart really Arabic literature, to put it on a map, to say what was really read, where, at what time, by what kind of people. We would need to develop new tools, and that's why we thought about creating this project, Bibliotheca Arabica, which actually comes. I had the idea for this title. I wanted to call it initially Digital Brockleman, because it's kind of a bio-bibliographical tool that would be based on and would further enhance what we can get out of Brockleman. But I used to call it now. I want to call it now Bibliotheca Arabica in remembrance of a 16th century Swiss scholar, actually Hottinger, who wrote a Bibliotheca Orientalia, part of which was a Bibliotheca Arabica, in which he pre-envisioned many of the things that we want to do in this kind of structure of finding out about literature through the authors and the manuscript tradition He totally failed in this, but because he didn't have the resources at the time to do it. But the idea he had was actually pretty interesting. So that's why I call it Bibliotheca Arabica.
How much?
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty much done. Right. We said 10 minutes, which is pretty much now, and I mean I can stop here. If you like.
Okay. Start. Okay, what the whole idea of the project and of the planned project is, Boris said, we are in the preliminary phase applying for the funding right now. The whole thing is about putting together all available metadata on Arabic manuscripts available in the being it printed catalogs, printed Arabic manuscript catalogs, or existing reliable databases on Arabic manuscripts. So putting it all together first. But the problem is, of course, you have to unify and standardize everything, because everyone uses different entry fields, uses different kind of romanization. So, or even some databases even lack any romanization, just pull in the Arabic authors, Arabic titles. So we have to add that as well. And the second point is already mentioned, but I think that's the crucial point, what we have to do, and one of the main things, the main task, is to create authority files, and I will get back to that again, on persons and on the works. And the third task is to enrich the data and to add biographical information, to add links. I will go more into detail right now, and of course to create a user-friendly front end for complex queries. This is an example I stole from Cornelius from a presentation you prepared for the same project. So I just modified it a little bit. Cornelius is also a member of the team. So this maybe shows you, maybe for you that's trivial, but it's just a point I would like to stress, is when you have different names, you find here name 1, name 2, name 3, you find different names of authors of a manuscript linked. The blue arrows are the links linked to a concrete manuscript in a certain library, in different libraries. But you found, for instance, you found different names, but in fact it's the same author. So the problem of all the databases we have, being reliable or not, being good or not, they're always dealing with names, and they're not dealing with the person, the author behind it. So everything you can look for and search for is a name. So if you only know one variant of a name, so you don't get the full, you don't get the results you want. You only get a short out. You cut out of that. So we want to put everything together and to combine and to create, like for this, Abu Yusuf Salman al-Halabi, to create one page for him, one data set just for him, and to link all his names, to link all the manuscripts where he authored a work. And of course, we have to standardize the romanization and make it also machine readable. And then, of course, concerning enriching data, linking to the dates, linking to places, everything you can think of, and everything which is there in the catalogs. Link him to other persons and link him to his works, to the works he's an author of. The Kitabat Tasliha will show he might have been a copyist, he might have been a holder, and to link it to other databases like authority file bases like the VIA. But again, it's a lot of work. It's not just putting all together all the catalogs, but it's to standardize and unify everything. That's the point. That's the whole. It's going to take us years, many years, to list all the names of the authors, to list all the names of the works, and then find out which ones are identical and which ones are not. So, and also concerning the links, you have to standardize the dates, the different calendars, the places, to really make it machine readable and link it to coordinates and not just strings, not just names of places, And the same goes with person and works. We're going to do this with persons, namely authors, copyists, holders, but of course also with works. And here it's the same problem again. You find titles, you find in existing catalogs and databases, you find different variants of titles. But if you want to look them up as one entity, you have to unify them and to create an authority file. So what we have right now is this what a student at this university is, which is on mathematics. It doesn't. Where's the slide? I won't go into detail, but just to show you, this is the names connected to topics. What we want is just names. So here are the typical Islamic genres or topics. Here is poetry, for instance, and you can hear there's one link to Islamic law. Maybe there's some more of this. Okay, first of all, I can say there's not really much data. We need much more. We need hundreds of thousands of data sets to really work with this short pattern from the required version of the course that's mentioned. But maybe there's one link, for instance, or poetry is linked to Islamic law and one author. But maybe it's more. So working with names instead of authors is not the visualization. It's not really valuable for us to do research. Of course, it shows the names who are connected to certain topics or whose works are connected to certain topics. But it's still working with names and not. Okay, so last slide. So possible insights, transmission and distribution of work, and of course the historical development. The regional distribution of a genre, for instance, which is quite similar but on a more abstract level. The relationship between regions in time and simple things like networks of authors linked by students, linked by personal relationships, linked by works or comments. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Comments, suggestions, regarding the engagement of names, authors, and so on. I'm wondering whether you consider the Library of Congress gaining data services.
The authority files, you mean? The authority files at the Library of Congress? Yes, if they have information, yeah, but I'm afraid many authors you can't find. I don't really. Well, then they have to allow us, or we have to propose.
I think you want to build on top of such as but not really change that, because that would be
I think this is the thing with the last
library of English, maybe. Yeah, but there's this VIAF.
The VIAF is maybe more valuable than just a Library of Congress.
We have a place called links to VIAF and the GND already built in the system that we have now, so that can be used certainly. But as already said, if you want to add data, it's totally not appropriate to. If you want to work and not wait on them to work with you.
There is one. There is one.
Yeah. No,
so that's the reason why.
We have several people here from the United States, and I spend a lot of time there. It's like such numbers just don't exist for projects 15 or 20 years in the United States. A long-term project, humanities project is 2 years at the most.
Yeah. One question, since you mentioned the class adjustment to standardized translation description. Yeah, why working with description in the first place? Given that these have explosives and like why transcribe? Why not?
Well, then you would need the full vocalization.
But this is sort of unified by design, organization, and quite a different system of transcription. And all the factors which are
we just need one.
Yeah. You just.
The solution that I had to come up with, because for some other project, what you do is you have a simple sort of a medical life observation that the classes used to use, like starting in the 80s when there was no support for Greek, from which you can easily convert it to any script. The beauty of this is that when you work only with one script, you don't have to maintain multiple ones, and you can easily convert it into any convention. Be it a Library of Congress, be it a French translation system, or Spanish, which I always kind of messes me up when I'm trying to guess what's the name that actually spelled there. That's it.
You want to understand the library that officially is called case of Federal, in German case, in the American case, prescriptions, and they're effective. Of course. So, and then you can clarify some.
We're not going to use it. You need something precise, machine readable. So you cannot really use the effective romanization like the Library of Congress.
Well, I mean that's a big methodological question. No. Point well taken. The problem, of course, is the problems with error on different machines. And again, on Arc, right? You load Arabic text on Mac, it works. You load it on Windows, it doesn't. So it's this problem, and I think the simpler entry of the system, the better. So it just needs to be consistent, transparent, and mutually very yeah. Yeah, but that's a front end. It's a little bit concerned, right? But of course. The problem with that script is when you get into like 3 characters sitting in the same place. Usually, how do you get it, right? You end up deleting them and retyping, right? Because you can't have a case where you're exactly this how it is, especially when there's deeper than the vowel or something like that. It's very annoying. Especially when you have to do with like several 100,000 names, right? That's the only one. And error distributed is not consistent, right? Because you put one vowel in the middle, I mean, you put one short vowel, name is correct. You put all the vowels, name is correct. You don't put vowels, again it's correct, but it messes up the search system because it's different speed. It's also so yes.
I think myself the question, and I was doing number one, systems so that it's all out. The practical way, if documents can run always
can I just quickly, it's not that I'm trying to promote myself, but no, it's just a solution, this method book. So for example, this is how you type it. And it doesn't require any additional characters that you already have on any keyboard. It's essentially it's very logical, and I believe that it even makes sense with it right away. And it converts it into, okay, this is a one-to-one transliteration, and it has additional symbols which are not used in academic transliteration. And it's automatically translated in proper Arabic, where you have all vowels, short and long, all in the proper order. And you can actually edit these kind of texts much easier than you can Arabic. And then another example, here it is, converted automatically into one-to-one transliteration, or into simplified, this is a Library of Congress transliteration, and converted into searchable stream, because for search you want to avoid all special characters, because nobody can type it from ordinary keyboard. And that's it. So that was my solution. I tested on undergrad students. They can handle it. With no problem. Wow. Yes. Small. That's the aspect of the problem from the team certain language. I think it's something we are striving for. Okay, guys, we should really move to presentation.
Can you just throw me out?
You can stay if you want to kick you out. You insist? You can have quicker. First forward. Oh, yeah. 20-ish minutes. This is our last presentation of this that we've heard from very interested study. We'll talk on about project in wisdom component.
Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Maxine, for inviting me. It's been a little while. I very much at the beginning of this project, so what I am wishing for you is rather ideas or critique on ideas on possible values that I want to entertain. So this is in German I can say, I'll tell you why. The text I'm dealing with is it's a classic, it's Kalina Bolivna. Has many different languages in Spanish. This Libro di Kalila Digna in Greek, Stephanides Paitelates in Latin, Directorium Vitae Humanae, etc. The problem is one thinks this is one work, but one would be hard pressed to pick up one single version of it and say this is the work. The text is sufficiently well known, yet it is put together out of Indian sources into a Middle Persian version and then translated into Arabic. The author was executed 757 in Hoffa. And then in its European translations in the 13th century, we have Latin, Hebrew, Greek, Old Spanish, and also Persian resurfaces. The problem is that the earliest Arabic manuscripts of the full text also are from the 13th century. So we have half a millennium of no text. By then, the variants are many. We do have an indirect transmission of snippets of aphorisms that are scattered through the text, which Sarah Savant's project will eventually help us with. And those few variants that one finds are interesting with different. But that is the wrong place to start. So one should start with whatever survives of full text and then go back and compare. The text by itself, by then I should give you some solution. This is the British Library, 4044 of Ibn Muhammad, the chapter of rat and cat. In the Syriac version, it's mouse and cat, so that's already one thing that changed. It's one of the earliest ones, and quite an interesting one, I should say. So, some visuals. The text has a double nature. It is animal fables, as you can see, but it really has a political message. It's a guidebook for rulers. So while looking entertaining, it actually has quite serious purpose. Some people have missed the point, whereas in the Arabic tradition, in the indirect tradition, this is very well understood, so much so that one picks out the aphorisms and throws away the stories. While in the European transmission, the story seems to be more important and the political message doesn't come across that well. But that would be a later question for textual history. My project here first is to understand the text as it is. It is a piece of art. It is a multiple frame construction, something of an nesting doll type. The outside is a dialogue with the king and the philosopher, Philosoph. The original was Brahmin, but in Syriac translation it's also Philosoph, so in Arabic. And the king tells the philosopher tells the king stories on particular items of political behavior, which then themselves have substructures and substructures and substructures. And within these tellings, which can be up to 5 frames, there's a lot of usage of amthal, of analogies, of wisdom sayings in the third person hikam. Both of those items are semantic nuggets that can be taken out and put back. That's why they travel very easily. And also within variants of the text, they're either there or they're not there. So that's why the text is a little bit like Lego. It doesn't suffer from things being taken out or put back in. Now, as we have a late and very variant situation, the earliest or the first and last attempt that was made of a critical edition of this text was 1922 by Martin Sprengling in Chicago, who announced this, Robert Breasted at the time, none of you will know his name, but one of the greats in American Egyptology, as the most important word of world literature. And that's the last that was ever heard. I can understand it, having undertaken the project. What one has, however, is a Syriac translation. So is that the right direction? No. The Syriac translation of it. One has no idea since the Middle Persian version is lost. But it was translated into Arabic and into Syriac. No, Arabic we only have, as I said, half a millennium later versions, and the different ones, 80 manuscripts exist in the world so far charted. I believe in reality at least double as much, because at the time the libraries in the Middle East were not so few, so alone in Europe there are 80 manuscripts. But coming back from the Middle Persian version in 519, the Syriac translation has been made. Somebody claims, I think it was Theodor Löwig, who usually tells the truth, that it is very close to the original, but we don't have the original, so I don't know based on what we make a decision. But this is how, and I've taken one story because it's fairly short. It's, as I say, the story of mouse and cat, or cat and rat. which is rather interesting because I compared this one and I found the changes that I found in 5 manuscripts only. So this is the tip of the iceberg. Things get much worse, but it gives you the skeleton of the story. Basically, a cat is caught in net, and the mouse comes by, persecuted by 4 enemies, makes pact with cat to protect mouse, right? And mouse does, promises cat, and there's a little sort of moment of delay when the mouse is nibbling very slowly on the net, and the cat thinks, are you serious? Then hunter appears on the horizon, rat keeps his word, both are free and jump on the tree. That's the story. Then comes the analysis. Cat calls rat back for dinner, and rat refuses, saying that that's the Syriac version, which at least that much was in the Middle Persian and must also have gotten into the Arabic. Mouse is he who confuses friend and foe hunts himself. And then there are a couple of images. It's like riding an elephant's tusk. It's basically being stupid. That image goes back to the Sanskrit version. Then the Syriac version very much has the message of friendship serves a purpose. Friendship is useful, as benefit of friendship, things like that. Nowadays, we don't think about friendship like that. We think friendship is something unconditional, but no, friendship is a useful thing. So why who we can distinguish benefit from harm, which is the last point of the story, and the end of it, they must avoid each other in the future. So the gist is there, but then many things happen. What I then did is, with my knowing that you have to go TI-XML, I went through all the manuscripts and cut them into units of meaning, semantic units, and labeled these either as part of frame dialogue, part of the narrative that moves the action forward, and then the elements that are that have an image component, like wisdom is like the sea. It would be an analog. I call that an M. Or the intelligent man avoids his enemy. That is a wisdom statement. That would be an H. So then, whenever something new appeared in any manuscript, it's put in violet. So whatever is in violet does not appear in the Syriac, but at least in one Arabic manuscript. This is the first half, so I'm giving you all the action steps. Sometimes here already is the problem, because you cannot, if you deal with literature and the story changes a little bit, you cannot necessarily match a variant between manuscripts, because sometimes one step of action becomes 2 in another one, or 2 becomes 1. That's why in my numbering I had to use the French piece. So I had to split something. Later when I saw another manuscript, oh, it's really elaborate here, I have to make 2 out of it. That's the problem. You cannot be totally systematic about literature. You need to leave some openness in it, and where I have a blue comment, that means in that place, another action step happens in a certain group of manuscripts. So I just watch. But this is sort of still my handmade pencil started. This is not from a computer. This is just made to go into the computer. As I go to the next slide, towards the end, it seems as if copyists start thinking themselves into the text. I've noticed that in other chapters, the changes seem to increase towards the end. And as we get to the last point, the political analysis and the explanation, what kind of friendship and ending of friendship must there be in such a case, that receives a lot of changes. So we don't have here accidental copyists' imaginations, but we have very conscious engagements in the message of the text. That makes this text very interesting. So by now you've noticed I don't want to produce a critical edition, rather I want to juxtapose as many significantly diverse variations of this text to chart the development. Now, as I put all of this together, again this is pencil, but I'm dreaming, or I'm not dreaming, I'm planning an algorithm that eventually when these basically stepified versions, and those are made for each manuscript type and also marked in on the manuscript itself that you can check it. That you can put them into a system, build an algorithm that they can be found and matched. So that I can, what I've done here now only with 5, the system can do for me and tell me, okay, the numbers are manuscript relevant. So each manuscript has, what is fixed on the left side is the master list of elements of the narrative, of the different types I mentioned. And then in each text, they're numbered through, and of course each text has a different subtotal because they're more or less per text. That's why in the last text, which is the one you see in the picture, the British Library one, that we end up with 63 is by far the longest. But in the furthest left Arabic, the BLF, this is in Paris they claim is the oldest known, is the beautiful and attractive one, identified as Sassi, has only 47. So you talk about a 15% increase here. So what I've done is, on the left, the Syriac, this is my basically counter-check manuscript. And not to confuse you, whatever was an analog or a wisdom saying, I marked in color because I wanted to take these out from the actual narrative elements. So they are in gray and in orange in the leftmost column. And the yellow one in the middle puts a cross wherever something is excellent in Syriac and at least one Arabic manuscript. So that's that must be in the middle Persian if it appears in those both branches. Beyond that, much happens, as you can tell. And with reference to my training, I have reproduced up on top the A, C, B, C, A. These are the families that Schreining established, and he used as his category the order of the chapters. I noticed that it makes no sense whatsoever, because my groups don't, at least already 4 or 5 manuscripts, it does not help. And I've organized them, I've totally disregarded the time. I'm dealing with a contaminated tradition. So an 18th century manuscript may preserve a 12th century version. So I've tried not to look at the date and rather put them in increasing order. And I sort of went intuitively, don't tell that any philologist. And ordered them in ascending, in terms of ascending content. I can only say something about textual history when I have many. But so far, one notices there's one common, which is the Paris one, very few additions in some places, but then there's a group of the next 4 that all have additions, but somehow the one seems to build on the addition of the one next to it and gets more and more and more. And whatever I put green so far is an element that only appears in one manuscript. Doesn't mean that it has to stay. In the next one it may reappear again. But while some manuscripts seem to increase each other, they could also be reusing each other, we don't know, because the furthest right is actually 13th century, so it's pretty old. So I cannot tell that. Please understand that as a two-dimensional thing. It's not chronological. But it basically shows there is a lot of creative rewriting that happens in this text, and some of that must have happened by the 13th century. That's sort of our end point, and that makes this text a reflection of the spirit of the time. But to go a little bit more into detail, so basically the challenge here, and I put in some technology, one can either put all of this into XML bases and take this digitized text, which I won't take the whole text, but pick 3 or 4 passages from the book, because it's not worth it to waste so much time digitizing when I don't know what the most representative text would be from. But when that's done, one needs an algorithm that can read and basically digest those XML databases. And I hear 2 opinions. One is we can talk about that later, but that's my pressing question at the moment. Do I try to break them up semantically according to my master list of tags now and put such XML-TI databases together, or do I leave the XMLs only with very simple formal data and put semantic web over it? Because I hear that XML is not very fast when you run into the algorithm. But anyway, so this is my big question at the basis of the moment. Then, no, that's right. Then that's, I'm almost through with it, but just to give you an idea of the semantic impact of this, I've taken a couple of cases of this. To go back, the first one is the case red distinguishes hidden and overt enmity. So this is all from the third dialogue where we get the political analysis of why friendship abuse cannot last. And here you can see what is marked in the diagram. This is where diagrams lie. You have to look at the text. Diagram puts an X. Okay, that element of action appears in both. But look at the length in Syriac. I keep the Schultes translation. Here's the one way to take the text. So I think I lose precision when I translate that into English. So, aber jene antwortete ihr, wer Freundschaft und Feinde begehrt und zwischen Feind und Freund nicht unterscheidet, schafft sich selbst den Feind. Very concise. See what long disposition you get in Arabic. Many friendship is hidden enmity, which is more harmful than overt enmity, and he who cannot manipulate a friend after form enmity, not be kind to an enemy after form of friendship, makes an enemy out of his friend. Maybe you can say that shorter, but you see the urgency of the Arab also to be very clear, almost didactic. He doesn't expose himself to an enemy who shows with the opposite of the treachery conceals. You get an added dimension of trust and treachery. This is the worst kind of enemy, especially if the enemy is inborn and one has been compelled by need to become his friend and companion. So we have an adawa jawhariya. That was not there in Syria. Now we think about inborn enmities. Someone who does not take part in the situation is like him. So that gives you the depth of philosophizing on friendship and enmity and further dimensions. This is another one. It's Syriac, it's only about benefit and disadvantage. Whereas down here, we get many, many more things. Original enmity again, and happiness, but maybe I won't bore you with that. But succinctly, both versions, now they're not very often in the Arabic, but the Syriac has just multi-capacate. So it stays on animal level. In the Arabic, it has, this is a chapter of someone who sold his occasional peace with the enemy while remaining on his guard. So the text is understood on the metaphorical level, and that's drawn out even more. Here I'm giving you the précis, the tags of what happens at in the third dialogue again. All of this is new. All of this is only in the Arabic tradition. So this is not the translation anymore. This is unacknowledged authorship of, I don't know which copyist, over 500 years. But see that there's some added accents, like heat water taken off the fire cools down, so that's an etiology for friendship, occasional friendship. But then there's much more about strength and weakness, about being on one's guard, forced friendship, and but there is also a caveat: the situation can repeat itself. So there is openness for this to be something general. There can be no reunion except through similar event. So the door is left open for this because, after all, it's a strategy manual for movers. Here we go. This is how it looks in Arabic, so it's a rather strong portion. You see some problems. I'm trying to do diplomatic edition because I want to keep whatever Middle Arabic, like la'aduban, adabu should be anul. So this is the wrong accusative. People who don't know Arabic prefer accusatives to look nicer. And so we need that in the text because it tells us the lies double, for instance. Because it tells me something about where the text is coming from. even in the standardized version of those elements, I would have stayed. Whereas something that are obvious orthographical errors, those I would correct. I keep asking Arabic colleagues, how there's not even a standard in the field. Probably in Greek there is, but in Arabic there is not. What do you do with an alif mafsura or alif mamduda, or the alif madda that is supposed to be a certain, by now in a certain sense, how to do it, but there are no hard and fast rules. Anyway, this is the whole thing, so you can see how long it is. But the final, the drawing out, this is a unique piece that is only in one manuscript. Tells you how much, now and then one manuscript can run away from the flood. Even get the Fred story suddenly comes back. That happens nowhere else. It happens in the Latin translation, by the way. I don't know why. But here the friend comes back and the philosopher says to the king, and basically interpret, the mouse does a lot of interpreting, but here the philosopher who has told the story goes back and says it once more and translates it for as a duty the mouse despite its false weakness or the consequences and so on. And then if man were able to do so, and that is necessary with a proper reflection in this, how might it be how powerful and gain the greatest share in the to understand this and reflect a lot to find out this problem. So he's taking the mouse as an example, so if the mouse can do it, you can. This proactive dimension is not anywhere else, it's just in this manuscript. This is Paris 588-1. And as you read the manuscript, it's a very opinionated one. He also cuts out things that he doesn't believe. Why is that so exciting? In the Arabian Nights we have it all. This is a classical Arabic text, it belongs to a canon. This is not a text you normally do that with. For some reason, and my hunch is because it was a fable text, a unique genre, and obviously not hadith, something more serious or historiography, that somehow people felt entitled to intervene. But because they intervene, they make it very interesting. And it has not been recognized. Everybody knows the editorial state is a disaster. There are two editions, one of one manuscript each. One is a terrible manuscript, which with correctly reproduced faults, but it doesn't help us much. Whereas the other one, the other one's okay, but I'd rather use the manuscript. And that's the Azam edition. The correct one of the manuscript is the Sheffield edition. So we have that. That is the state of things. Sorry, there's nothing to do with it. I leave it. For the large grains, again, an algorithm is, I have the support of the CDs at the university to write that for me, inshallah. And, but for once I have done that, the second level will be the fine grained, basically take one unit of action and then run all the manuscripts through that and see how that changes. Well, that is the second step. And for that, I'm still looking for a tool, and Colatex has been proposed as one possibility. So that's, I think, what we will try. But since I spoke with Thomas Könches, he gave me the brilliant idea, well, run it through different programs. Go do several comparatives. And he had a couple of others, as the Teals one. And, but if there's another text comparative program that is one should use instead of or in addition, I don't know.
I want to put that guy on the spot because they've been talking about really cool.
Well, just send me some email about what you have and what you want to have. Yeah, it's ready now, but then I will answer you whether I can do it or not. So, yeah.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
I need your email right away. Thank you so much.
No, I would be really pleased to collaborate.
But what you said is that essentially you will take in the text with all the variations and you reduce it to elements. And that's actually those elements can be computationally compared. How they stack with each other, how they replace each other, what's the order of those elements. I think the only issue will be how to encode those elements consistently. And it doesn't really matter whether it's TI or something else, it's just the consistency that's the most important thing. Maybe actually something like RDF, object, subject, and the relationship. And then you can actually, then it can be more, something else can be derived from that. Thinking on the fly. But please,
Yeah, collaborative.
Kirill, small question. First of all, thank you very much. It's very impressive. Looking forward to your progress. And I'm wondering, speaking about this textual chronology, would it make any sense to look into the Sanskrit versions of Jantara, or do they entirely sort of come much later?
You're opening a can of worms. We have done that.
Speaking about this Syriac, maybe this was done.
The trouble is that, and I read, this one is from the Mahabharata, the Muslim camp. And I don't know why, but I found a number of action steps that are apparently new in the Arabic in the Mahabharata. But there it's 20 pages long. It's completely different. And the two editions I could get hold of course, are different from each other. It seems to be an oral tale that itself has been written on late. So it's again, it's comparing two different books with each other. And I realized if I want to do that, and I want to do that, I need a serious Sanskritist to work with me. I can do that, working from translation. But you're absolutely right. It shows me again that maybe the Syriac is not the only thing one should base oneself on. So, but you're absolutely right.
It might be very interesting.
No, and there's Jens Browning knows about it. We need to. We don't have Sanskrit at the Free University, but yeah, unfortunately.
There was someone else earlier, I think.
Oh, really? Sorry.
I only have a question, not a suggestion. You can arrange me the way you like.
Okay, Cornelius.
Okay, just one or two questions maybe. So if I got this correctly, this will result in somehow a development or history of what semantic themes were added at some point of time because were somehow relevant. Is that more or less the idea?
That's one of the outcomes. Sure, that's in terms of history of ideas. Absolutely. I want to see what were the foci of different manuscript groups. Then if something emerges, maybe we can date the manuscripts or eventually find the age and place where one variant comes from. That lovely result will only come together when we've looked at a number of different ones and it gels after 80 manuscripts. So that answer I could probably only give in 2-3 years, if so. The first very basic product will be an online edition of juxtaposing as many representative variants as we have, probably somewhere between 3 and 5, that you can read manuscript X digitized, and then the portal will have 3 windows that you can look at 3 versions, or that you as reader can pick, okay, this one I want in the Arabic, here I want to see the manuscript, and here's the translation. So that is the idea, to make a digital edition.
Synoptic one in a way, or
synoptic, exactly. Not merging any representing manuscripts as they are, or digitized, typed up, and with all the commentaries as layers. There are 4 kinds of commentaries: syntactic, chronological first, that's sort of that stays with the text, but then syntactic, semantic, and ideological. Where it's superposed layers, and then that's one idea. And the other idea is to have to zoom in and see when you look at one step, like rat refuses cat's invitation to dinner, that you can then see the comments on this particular passage from all the manuscripts that contain it. So you can actually see what happened to that particular passage. For instance, in some manuscripts it's corrupt, so you can look at another one. Sometimes the corrupt word, it often happens this way, be interpreted to say something different. At that point, you should not repair it because it has become different. So I think there is a textual microhistory which we will first be able to interpret, but in the end, of course, we're interested in the big idea.
And how relevant would be the single revision or a single manuscript be? Because it sounded like it's a wonderful playground for doing something like Formgeschichte, for instance. Why did they change certain aspects of it or added things? And in this case, probably the character of the whole manuscript or revision would be interesting because there might be an idea running through the whole book affecting certain semantic elements. And it would be a question, how can you respect that and also the diachronic development?
So you would opt for putting as many manuscripts in digitized form up.
As far as you said, also tracking the elements through all the stories, right? If there's like a theme introduced in all the stories, depending on the manuscript.
For instance, let's say there's just an Arabic manuscript which is deliberately produced for a ruler again, and so there might be an emphasis on making things explicit even more than maybe in the sources, and this is something that runs through all the anecdotes, for instance.
Yeah.
But
here the problem is that we need to get some kind of adaptation that will abstract from text into and Eric, can I put you on the spot here? Yeah. What do you think is the free banking will make out? Is it essentially converting sentences?
So, but it's hard to predict exactly what that would be. But some of that thing should be tried.
So free banking is essentially representing sentences as semantic trees.
Yep.
Syntactic trees. And I'm just kind of thinking as we go. We had a presentation of Vanessa and Bob Gorman, who uses free banking to identify the syntactic structures in known authors. Then trying to identify sentences whose authors are not known through this syntactic relationship. Yes. And I think they got a very interesting result, which Najib was particularly excited to talk about that yesterday. And I heard their early work, and I feel that I missed. But their talk must be recorded and available to our workshop.
Who was that?
Vanessa and Bob Gorman. They are classicists at University of Nebraska.
That is incredibly interesting and useful for two reasons. Because this is supposed to be by Ibn Muqaffa, but then it's much rehandled between other works by Ibn Muqaffa. So one could run.
Yes.
And if I ask colleagues, is the style the same or different? I asked two Khalil Abdul expert. The one says it's the same, the other one says it's different.
The extent to which syntactic forms are useful in stylistic varies from author to author.
That's essential. There's something planned to do. Anything pretty much anything. Several of them are used more.
That would be nice if one could run that.
To find out when today's order will arrive or get an update on its status, log on to ocado.com. There you can get live status updates using the same tracking technology as our customer services team. But if you'd prefer to speak to an advisor, please hold. We'll be with you in a moment. You're currently caller number 9 in the queue. We apologize for the wait and thank you for continuing to hold. Have you tried our own label range? We've over 500 products and we're always adding more. There's everything from fresh produce to store-covered essentials. Let us know what you think of our new range.
A great Arabist alive who's never touched a computer in his life. But what he does is he defines syntactic structures and then has these huge databases. It's all, of course, traditional Arabic studies. As I was going through them, I noticed a lot of them are relational sentences. Umso, desto, desto, umso, and such things that you don't find in grammar books. If somebody could put those syntactical structures, digitize them, and then digitize because he always comes with the data collection of them, one could get a much better grasp of post-classical, it's still classical Arabic, but it has certain structures that are not, you don't want them in a way.
Well, I guess you need to talk to Giuseppe Solano, who's here.
Giuseppe is
not here. He's not here. He's a Leipzig, but he's not
okay.
Here.
Solano. Thank you.
I'll give this one.
And do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. What is the...
Sorry.
Sorry, please. Sorry.
I'm building on what Kirill said. I'm going to be the annoying person and say, but what about the Persian tradition? Have you thought about looking at the...
No, absolutely. I have to look at all of them. I looked at the Latin, and Hebrew and Latin is depending on each other. Then there is the Greek, then there's the Spanish, and these are the earliest ones. So the Greek is a different strand, different family, probably an older one if you do Nihov. And the others are one family. And then, of course, there's the New Persian, and they're all between the 11th and 13th century. One has to look at them for sure. And it's just that in terms of logistics right now, it doesn't help me that much because the comparative data won't be so close. But no question, I need to, go at them. People say they call it the Latensio Hispanic cards. The European, the group Spanish, Latin, Hebrew, French, from a family that is not that much transmitted in the Arabic. But I'm not sure until I've looked at it in detail, and the last person working on the Spanish manuscript, Dula, has actually used one of the Arabic editions to counter-check. So that's amazing that his phonologist used the Arabic. That is music as a future, but it's definitely necessary.
So yeah, maybe a question, given that most computational stuff seems to be actually available, which leads to the question, how much of the corpus is actually transcribed? I'm not talking about being encoded according to standard, but to which extent do you actually have digital text? Talking about 80 manuscripts in Arabic only. And then, additional manuscripts.
None of us digitize all manuscripts. We have to digitize all.
No, okay. So you have not a single digital text at the moment?
No, we have about, at the moment we don't do full text. Because my suspicion is out of the manuscripts, so let's say we identify another 40, 120, out of those, some will be thrown out because they are later and inferior copies, very identical copies of earlier versions. And so we digitize those 5 passages out of, I can't tell at this moment, certainly not all 120. I don't have that much manpower or funding. I have to make a smart selection. But then when I've identified, and that is my sense, that was my sort of, I'm also thinking practically what to do this in my lifetime. That when I've identified a number of them that are sort of representative of a larger group, those are fully digitized. At this point, I need another research grant, and I was thinking that at least 5 needed to be digitized. If I have more manpower, I can do more. But
no, because I'm asking because the sort of computational methods you're looking for, asking for, depend on the corpus being available.
Yeah.
Because you can't run textual comparison if you don't have text.
Yes.
So you can't find anything that you did not transcribe.
Yes, of course.
So the point is you only visualize what you already know, but it's not a new method that you apply to a text that you could apply otherwise. It sounds a bit sort of very strict what I'm saying, but
no, wait. You're saying I need to, of course, transcribe all the manuscript before I can use. Yes, of course.
But you said you don't want to do that. You said
of course I want to do it. No,
wait a second. You said
I'm just thinking
okay.
Not all manuscripts, even if you do critical edition, not all manuscripts that exist need to be digitized for this, because some simply by reading you can discard a number of manuscripts that are later versions or later and not good ones of.
No, I think it's a dangerous assumption because again this all these digital methods allow us to pick up on things that are either. But at the same time, when you have an already, like say, full transcription of one, you don't need to begin the next one from zero, right? You take this text and you modify it if it's and that saves a lot of time. So essentially, it's the transcription of the first one or the longest one is the most time consuming, but then it goes down and it's yeah.
In a number of versions, you could not do that. They're too different.
Well, no, fair enough.
They're totally reformulated. I mean, they say the same thing, but in the syntax, the sentences are turned around. It's amazing. Sometimes it sounds like code. Sometimes it veers between verbatim identity in one sentence, and the next sentence is totally verbatim. It's a kind of variance that I find very strange, and I haven't seen it, but it's a good idea. And so you think that I should not trust my own
no, I would never say. No, but I think you should not, and it's very helpful to use all sorts of digital tools to visualize your findings. I'm not against it. But if you want to use them as an analytical tool, you should kind of be aware of the limitations of the methods you use. And if you don't have a full corpus, you can of course not run corpus analysis on it. Yeah. That's sort of the truism that I'm saying.
I see. If you want to do an entire textual history, then you need to have a piece of each single manuscript in electronic form. That's an argument.
And that's the more things you have, of course, the more the better the variety of approaches you can try. Right. Okay.
So, have you thought about aligning the translations?
I'm at the moment aligning the Arabic. I'm not translating yet.
Yeah, sure. Just aligning the translation with original text or aligning the several translations together.
Okay, I think you need to explain what you mean by aligning translation.
Okay, that you link the word or phrases together in vocab. You match the translation and the source. I don't want to name source text because it's not obviously it's source text, but the different translations together.
You mean, yeah, when I have done, and word by word sort of match of. No, I haven't done that yet.
Do you plan it? Because I've seen that you see this as an e-learning project.
Yes.
And probably you can use this in your classrooms that your students or even online that students do the alignment.
So you have, in other words, you have a passage in Arabic and you have a passage in translation,
right.
and before you know that these are very close. Right. What few students do, they select a word in Arabic and its equivalent in German, English, Latin, whatever other, and they align every word, every phrase with each other, and you end up with something that students get a good training in language, and then later other students can use to read these texts on their own because they have translation and the original, and they know which word corresponds to which. So,
and about this particular case, I think that the translations are interesting by themselves. I mean, then we can probably do the tree writing on translations as well to see what happened from translator perspective. I'm a translator. Yes, and probably the last versions could be easily found aligning and not just chapters, but also vocabularies which are missed to be translated.
Yes, it could be a very nice exercise for the students to actually learn the vocabulary by trying to match the translations to the original. That's a nice application for the e-learning. No, you're quite right. For the aligning, for the comparison of the different versions, that's why I'm thinking of using Polatex or whatever. No, I'm writing to you, right? You have to give me a name.
Easy Melichka, or I will give you.
Give it to me. So I can bother you. Interesting. Oh, the last question that I had in the my question. What is the sense? Does one is it preferable to put the full information into the very original XML TEI file, or is it safer or faster for an analytic algorithm to leave the XML simple and superstructured with semantic web?
I think that it doesn't matter unless it's reconstructible. If you can match exactly the tag with the initial text or initial part of text or chunk, then it doesn't matter.
And I also think you're not really talking about the amount of data that will show the computer, right? I mean, we're talking about one text essentially.
Yeah,
So it's not thousands.
And anyway, it can be translated to other formats inside of the computer.
Yes, also. So I think what you need to, I would go with the simplest. The one which will require the least amount of time to train people to do that. So just to go with the very, very practical.
Certainly.
Yeah, I think that's the most.
My intuitive response would be, I sort of have a problem with producing a digitized version of every text that I cut up with my chosen subdivisions, because I haven't seen everything yet. So I feel more comfortable if I leave the text as is and put my semantic subdivision into a layer on top of it. Because should I need to change it, I would not have touched the original digitized document. That's why I like the semantic web idea.
Okay. And also, it's also standard markup.
Yeah, it's standard for some. That is standard for some typical document alignment systems. So it's
to standard. Yeah, well, the idea is that you separate markup and the text.
Yeah, essentially you don't want to touch your text. Your text exists as it is, and then you cross.
Standard markup.
But it assumes standoff markup. But even that you say you don't want to touch your original digital text is quite interesting, because of course there is no original digital text. Right? There's an image that's not a text, and then you produce a transcription from it that you have to structure by some means, and it's already based on your decision. It is not free from your editorial decision in the first place.
No,
so you can touch it, right? You can change it because it's not the original anyway.
What I mean is, I want to reproduce the version from the manuscript. And that has already mistakes. No, but I want to have, let's say, and of course by deciphering it, I might introduce changes that assume an error. Or sometimes I can't read something, or I have to reconstruct something. But that's going to work. Well, that's how it is. But I'm talking more about my semantic cut-ups. I think that's another layer of interpretation.
Oh, sure. No, absolutely, that's true. No, sure. Like,
and that I would like to have at another layer of the electronic document as well.
No, sure.
Well, does it make sense to you?
Okay. I have one question. You mentioned something earlier that XML process slowly or something?
Yeah, that's
the strangest. Yes, but it should have no effect at all unless the person.
For really large
text. Yeah, if you have 10,000 texts, all locked up in text, it's no problem if you're using the right software. If you're using inverted indexes, if you're trying to do it with relational databases, it will choke and die. So that would be ridiculous. It's not XML that would determine it's not the format that would determine how you want to process it.
Well, it depends on the algorithm.
It will be very dense XML files.
The amount of text you have still is not No. Okay.
If you can parse it and store in the short RAM in the memory, then it's not a problem. But if you have really big data and you have to go for the file every time you want to use it and then parse it and doing it many times per second, then it would make sense. Yeah, but it's definitely not that case. Yeah.
I mean, 100 million documents you're used to using. 200, 500 million, no problem. Let's call it a day, call it a conference, call it a workshop. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you all.
We kind of had a discussion session, but I wondered if those who are still brain power to do that, we move to some place where we can drink cold maybe split into relevant groups and discuss certain things and hold that discussion session about okay. Thank you, Maxime. Must thank Greg who is the real person behind this.